You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering Tennessee. So, Kenzie.
Yes, Lauren.
Let's get scary.
Let's do it.
Welcome.
So happy to be here.
I never know how to start these.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I can barely get our intro down, so I'm not one to be able to help with that.
Yeah, how many weeks have you been doing this?
I don't know, but in all fairness, the first 5 that I did, I was technically a guest, and so you always did the intro.
You've been on long enough. You came on in August.
Okay, but
That's 4 months.
it's like the same way I get stage fright.
You're just talking, which you love to do.
I know, but this is a script, and I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up.
What kind of a script? It's like notes. Oh, I guess that beginning part.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So are you excited for our reunion?
No.
After this, we need to figure out our plan, by the way.
Getting hammered.
Well, yes, but where and when and
My apartment. You and Joe are coming to pick me up, and we're getting trashed.
solid.
Okay.
10 a.m. Woo!
There we go.
All right, so I guess we'll just jump in because our last one was really long. So
How
Mackenzie,
long was it?
It was okay. So the editing ended up, or the whole thing ended up being an hour 55 minutes.
Woo!
I edited it down to an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
So
So isn't that very typical? Oh, no, usually,
it's 1:15
yeah.
edited down, or
Yeah.
1:06 things.
This episode is not going to be any better. Granted, just how I wrote my notes. So
Mine's pretty long too. All right, so Mackenzie, tell us about Tennessee.
I would love to. Their state pet is the rescued dog or cat.
Oh, I like Papa.
The state drink is milk.
Eh.
Not the best. The birthplace of the atomic bomb is Oak Ridge, Tennessee, known as the Secret City. Just because of the atomic bomb.
I don't really know. It didn't really go into it. It was just, this is the secret city. Maybe because of the atomic bomb thing.
But they didn't make it there. Pretty sure they test.
Birthplace. I don't know. There are some things where it's
You just read it and plop it in there?
yes, because the article will be 25 interesting facts. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I'll read them. And it's just a little line. It doesn't give you a whole explanation of what the fact is.
No.
So here we go. Secret City.
Secret City. All right. A lot of people in Tennessee refer to themselves as butternuts,
Mm-hmm.
which dates back to the colors of the uniforms worn by the soldiers of the Civil War. I don't remember what their uniforms look like.
Was that the blue?
No, that would be the Revolutionary War.
Oh. Then I am not of any help right now.
And I'm pretty sure Union was a gray blue. I don't remember what. I'm sure the
don't know.
Confederacy was red and white.
I would think so.
Yeah. Any hooser. The highest temperature ever recorded in Tennessee was 113 degrees Fahrenheit or 45 degrees Celsius, and it was recorded on August 29th, 1930.
Go close.
In Crossville, you will find the world's tallest treehouse. That's cool. It's about 100 feet tall and covers an estimated area of 10,000 square feet. That is huge.
That is huge.
It has over 250,000 nails, and it was made from recycled material. Very
Okay.
cool.
Good
like
with
it.
the universe, the environment.
The universe, too. Lord knows it also needs saving.
Oh, yes.
The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is the most visited national park in the United States. Did you know that the Great Smoky Mountains are called the Great Smoky Mountains because of the way that the temperature is, the moisture above the mountains and how it can fall and it causes fog type things, so it looks like there's a bunch of smoke.
Ooh. Very aptly named.
Mm-hmm. There's more technical things to that, but that's what I remember from when. It is known as the salamander capital of the world and has over 30 different species in the park. The turtle capital of the world is Reelfoot Lake.
Why is that making you look at it that way?
I don't know, because it's not spelled like real, but it sounds like it's real foot. Like a real foot, not a fake foot. You asked what I was thinking. That's what it was.
I should have learned at this point. Sometimes it's best just not to know.
You know? The largest underwater... What?
Yeah. There's underwater lakes. Look it up. It's a real thing. You probably thought that was a stupid comment I put in there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're real.
Deep water or brine lake is a volume of brine collected in a seafloor depression.
Yeah. So it's a lake in the sea. So underwater lake. Jerk, thinking I was incorrect.
Well, so the largest underwater lake is the Lost Sea, and it is located in Sweetwater.
Yeah. Underwater lake.
It's interesting that it's the Lost Sea when it's not lost.
Yeah, it's been found.
Yeah.
I didn't make the name. I would have come up with a really fun one.
Josephine Myrtle Corbin was born in Tennessee in 1868, and she had 2 pelvises side by side, resulting in her having 4 legs. Unfortunately, she died at a young age due to an infection in one of those legs.
Which is actually really sad.
So she only had a 0.25% chance of
Kenzie.
For only one day, September.
Sorry.
Wow. For only one day, September 21st to be exact, in 1807, Kingston was the capital of Tennessee. Short-lived.
Very short-lived.
Mm-hmm. The 1982 World's Fair took place in Knoxville and had an attendance of around 11,127,786 visitors.
Wow.
Tennessee has 9 official state songs, making it the state with the most songs, and it also has an official bicentennial rap.
Yes, I did not listen to any of them because I don't know how good it would be, but it's a very interesting fact.
Truly interesting. This is awful. By 1860, 1 in 4 people in Tennessee were slaves. By 1860, oh, right. When was the emancipation? 1863?
I don't know.
Or that was the Civil War.
I am not good at history at all. Dates,
Okay, that's fair. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis on April 4th at the Lorraine Motel, 1968, in case you wanted to throw a year in there.
Oh, wow, look at you.
I know some stuff. Tennessee has the most recorded caves of any state in the U.S. Talking about one of those caves today.
Oh.
There are more than 10,000, which amounts to about 20% of all known caves in the country.
But I think last week, Missouri was known as, like, the cave state or something. Or one of the states was, like, maybe not Missouri, but one of the states was known as the cave state. And I had done the research for Tennessee, and I was like, well, now how can you be the cave state if this one has more caves? Oh, yeah, Missouri is known as the cave state, having over 6,000 caves. But then we go to Tennessee, and they have 10,000. So I think Tennessee or Missouri was trying to take some credit there.
It doesn't look like they communicate very often about their amount of caves. Since 1925, the Grand Ole Opry has broadcast a live radio program every weekend. Due to this, it is the longest continuously running live radio program.
Yeah.
Cool. The famous Batman building in Nashville is actually the 33-story AT&T building.
It literally looks like Batman.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when we were driving in for the first time, I was like, oh, it looks like Batman. Not knowing anything that it was, like, called the Batman building.
I don't remember seeing that.
It's, like, right in the middle of the city.
Huh. If you stand at Lover's Leap, you'll be able to see 7 different states. That's cool.
Yeah.
At the Chapel Hill Cemetery in Mackenzie, spelled wrong, but that's okay.
I literally put spelled without an A.
It looks as if it has strange lights are dancing above the graves. Nashville hosts an annual full moon tattoo and horror festival where people are given the chance to meet some of their favorite niche actors.
I could not find any more information on this festival.
So this you looked into.
Well, yeah, because I thought it sounded cool. Like, going to get a tattoo and watching horror movies and, like, hearing about horror movies, that sounds so cool.
Half of that sounds cool.
The tattoo part for you.
Yeah.
We could go and then
leave.
Well, see, I was going to say that, but I don't want to miss the horror stuff.
The tow truck was invented here in 1916. Moon pie was made in 1917 in Chattanooga. Isn't that how that song goes?
I don't know, but I know that Chattanooga.
Yeah.
The word is familiar.
That's the only part I know. Cotton candy was made in 1897 by a dentist. Ooh, joke's on you, because that's shitty for your teeth. Tennessee is the home of Mountain Dew.
I dated this one guy, and the first time I had dinner with his family, his brother walked downstairs wearing a Mount and Dew Me shirt. And his mom literally looked at him and said, please go change. He did not.
Where did you guys date?
It was like that weird, when was it? Junior year?
I don't remember.
Yeah. It was like that weird, like, 2-week long thing.
Yeah.
Where it ended very soon after it started.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interessante.
Yeah. But
Great shirt, though.
I've just always remembered that shirt whenever I see Mountain Dew.
That seems very on brand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dolly Parton, Morgan Freeman, Megan Fox, Aretha Franklin, Wilma Rudolph, Miley Cyrus, and Justin Timberlake are all from Tennessee.
Quite a few people from Tennessee.
Quite a few.
All
So,
right.
Lauren, what you telling us about today?
Okay. So, I do have puns. I actually have a lot of puns, and I was reading them to people at work, and I was laughing, and no one else was, so it's fine. So,
As one does at a pun.
right. So I'm going to start with a little history, and I promise just a little. So
You know that doesn't bother me.
it doesn't bother you, but I don't know if it bothers anyone else. So in Furman versus Georgia, the Supreme Court found the death penalty to be invalid. So pretty much the death penalty was considered to be arbitrary and freakishly imposed. It was in violation of the 8th Amendment, which is cruel and unusual punishment, and at times the 14th Amendment, which is persons born in the U.S. are citizens of the U.S. So that's kind of a racial amendment.
Where was this?
This was Furman versus Georgia. So it was a case where the Supreme Court, quote, invalidated all death penalty schemes in the U.S., and in order for states to reinstate the death penalty, they had to at least remove arbitrary and discriminatory efforts in order to satisfy the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Fair enough.
So that reminded me, did you ever watch that movie in high school, like the death penalty one? There was this one movie, I don't know why it stands out to me so much, but this one guy, he makes it look like he committed a crime, one that would put him on death row. And he wrote he had a note after to the side, and he told this one girl, like, please read this note once I've been executed. So she reads the note. Well, he didn't commit anything. He wanted to show how easy it is to get put on death row falsely.
I have not seen this movie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it stuck with me through all these years.
I can't see that.
Can't remember the name of it. But okay, but that's all the history. Told you it'd be short.
Oh, interesting.
So why do I bring this up? Well,
why?
Because why? Well, today I'm going to talk about Christa Gale Pike, the youngest woman to be sentenced to death in the U.S. during the post-Furman period. A young woman described as having, quote, an angel's face and a devil's heart.
I thought you were about to say anal.
Yep, an anal face. So Christa Gale Pike was born on March 10th, 1976 in West Virginia. I know it says West Virginia.
I was going to say, we got Georgia, we got West Virginia.
I know.
You're going to make it to Tennessee?
We will. It is believed that her mother drank while pregnant with her, but her mother denies these accusations. Pike's brain was studied at some point down the road, and though there are contradicting reports, one of these reports found that her frontal lobes are not developed in a normal way. She had a troubled life growing up. Her mother was more interested in partying and living that party life than taking care of her new daughter, and her father wasn't really in the picture, so she was raised by her grandmother. Some reports say that her grandmother was abusive, but others don't mention that fact, so can't really be sure. One report noted that she grew up near her grandfather's slaughterhouse, so she saw those disturbing images anytime she was near it.
Ugh.
Unfortunately, her grandmother passed away when Pike was only 12, and that is when things started to go downhill even more. This is a really dark story, by the way.
Okay.
She was shuffled between living with her mom and her dad, whom did not live together. Who did not live together?
Mm-hmm.
When do you use whom? Isn't it when you're, like, if you were to use him, you would use whom?
No.
Someone told me that forever ago.
They were very wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's like something with belonging, like to whom it belongs.
I just know when you write a note in school, it was like, to whom this may concern.
I was right. When it belongs to someone. Did I not say it belongs? Dang, I'm good. For someone who can't spell. I know my shit about whom and who.
So, pretty much mom and dad don't live together.
Got it.
At this young age is when Pike was introduced to marijuana.
Devil's lettuce.
The devil's lettuce. Her mother, a little too late I would say, tried to bond with Pike, and they did this by smoking together in order to establish a friendship. But this was like at a very young age. So her mom was the one who
Interesting bonding technique.
Yep. So her mother was the one who ultimately introduced her to weed and kind of all that stuff. So her mother would also bring her new boyfriends into the house, meaning they were around her daughter often. This led to violence. One piece of shit boyfriend that her mother had brought around would abuse Pike. One of these times he used a belt to beat her. There were rumors of both physical and sexual abuse as well. And what's scary is that horror movies and porn were played and watched routinely in the house. Again, all while she was a young child and while she was present. What scary horror movies?
Yeah, I got
Thank
it.
you. Yep.
Got it.
That's kind of... the bar that has been set for my puns for the rest of this.
Got it.
They're not great.
Okay.
So
I still appreciate the effort.
thank you. I really did try this one. Yep. So not too surprisingly, she turned to weed as a way of self-medication and used it as a way to ease the pain caused by her mother's boyfriends and any of the other abuse she witnessed. So, I mean, totally makes sense. At one point, her mother reported
There are worse drugs she could do that with.
Absolutely. Her mother reported that she was growing weed in her room starting at the age of 9. Yeah. Right. There were some reports and I was like, okay. And I couldn't find out how this one happened, but when she was 14, she had a live-in boyfriend. So her boyfriend like lived with the family.
The child? The girl?
The 14-year-old daughter, yeah. But that was also a volatile relationship, and at one point she threatened him with a butcher's knife.
I mean, given how mom and dad are, it wouldn't actually be totally outrageous
Right.
for this to be happening.
Right. And by the time she was 18, she had been thrown out of her father's house multiple times due to being dishonest, disobedient, and manipulative. It was never confirmed, but it was speculated that she had at one point sexually abused her father's 2-year-old daughter who was from a different marriage. So not her sister, but I guess like her half-sister. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So she eventually dropped out of high school, can't say I'm super surprised,
Right.
and spent a short stint in juvenile detention after being arrested for shoplifting. Upon her release, she went on to join the Job Corps. So this is a government program offered to low-income youth that allows them to take vocational training and get some career skills. So good.
Okay.
It allows the students to live in dormitories to get a sort of campus environment and feel while they're studying whatever it is that they're interested. So it could be nursing, computer programming, culinary arts, kind of all that sort of stuff.
Awesome.
So Pike had attended the center that was located in Knoxville. That's how we're in Tennessee.
That one little blip.
No, all of it happens in Tennessee
Okay.
from now on. And while here, she was studying computer programming, but other reports say she might have been there to study nursing, but she's there to study something.
Very, very different professions.
I know. I read 2 different articles and I was like, okay. This is around the time when she met a man named Daryl Shipp. And he was just a bit younger than she was, but she completely fell for him. He was at the Job Corps focusing on culinary arts. So the two had a similar life situation being here at the Job Corps, but they both also shared a fascination in the occult and devil worship, which they dabbled in.
No.
So Pike and
Slippery slope.
Slippery slope. So Pike and Shipp formed a relationship that is.
Oh my god. These are so bad.
I know. They're all like this. It's so dark. It was very hard to like
No, I get it.
find good places to add anything.
I totally understand. I do, but oh my god.
So they're a thing. They're dating. They're doing all that. Okay, this one's also really bad. She may have even said to him at one point, "You're the only 10 I see."
You need a Band-Aid.
Oh my god. So a long time ago, the beach trip where Mackenzie and I got stuck in an elevator.
Yes.
My brother had brought a friend, and his friend was so cute. And they're young, and they're trying to pick up girls because, you know, they're 9, and that's going to pick up girls being 2 years old. So we were trying to tell him, like, different pickup lines. So we're like, oh, ask if they're from Tennessee because they're the only 10 you see. And his one friend was like, well, why can't I ask if they're from Florida? And I was like, because that doesn't fit into the pickup line. And so another one, we were like, oh, ask if they like hurt them or if they have a Band-Aid because you hurt yourself falling for them. And he opens his eye really wide and goes, do you have a Band-Aid? I was like, what are you trying to do? We still talk about it all these years later. Okay. So all the happiness is done. Now we're into like the serious stuff.
Okay.
So
because it was so happy up until this point.
Okay, the last line is fun. Everything else is really sad. So, enter Pike's schoolmate, Colleen Slummer, from Jacksonville, Florida. Oh, Florida!
Remember how we said we weren't going to ramble this one?
Oh my god. So Colleen, 19 years old, was known for being a pretty and enthusiastic girl. She was at the Job Corps in the computer technology program. For whatever reason, Pike got it into her mind that Slummer was trying to steal her boyfriend, and this enraged Pike. Friends of Slummer's literally said that she was not trying to steal Shipp and that there was nothing going on between the two of them, but Pike was set on this idea and was looking for revenge.
She was trying to steal her booty. Because it's a ship.
Oh. She said to her boyfriend that, quote, that little whore has to be taught a lesson.
Ooh.
So she convinced both her boyfriend, Daryl, and their friend, Shadola Peterson, who was 18, that Colleen needed to be, quote, sacrificed in the name of Satan.
Oh, good God.
Yep. On January 12th, 1995, Pike, her boyfriend Daryl, and their friend Shadola and Colleen signed out of their dormitory. Pike had told Colleen that she wanted to apologize for thinking that she was trying to steal her boyfriend and wanted to make a peace offering. So she wanted to offer her some weed, and they would head out to the woods, an abandoned steam mill on part of the University of Tennessee campus, smoke, make peace, come out of it as friends. All would be good. But right before leaving, Pike made sure to pocket a box cutter and small meat cleaver. So the group of four left their dorm and started to head down a dark jogging path, making their way to the secluded area where the abandoned mill stood. And this is when Pike's plan fell all into place. When they first entered the dark woods, Colleen must have quickly realized that this wasn't going to be a peacemaking session, because as soon as they were far into the woods, Pike began yelling at Colleen, again accusing her of trying to sleep with Daryl. Of course, Colleen denied, and that is when things took a horrible turn. So it gets a little graphic here, so a little warning if you don't want to hear this. So first, Pike
Can I skip ahead?
You are stuck here, so no. First, Pike kneed Colleen in the face, and for the next 30 minutes to an hour, they taunted her, beat and slashed her, and pretty much tortured her.
Oh my god.
And all because they all apparently dabbled in the occult, the group of three even carved a pentagram into Colleen's chest. During the whole ordeal, Colleen was begging for her life, but the trio didn't care. They continued to cut, slash, and torture Colleen. Finally, Pike delivered the final blow, and she took a large chunk of asphalt and slammed it into Colleen's skull.
Oh my god.
And to make matters even worse, Pike wanted a little souvenir to remind her of this killing. So what did she do? She took a piece of Colleen's skull and placed it in her jacket pocket, just as a little keepsake to, quote, trap the victim's soul in her body. I know it's really bad. And it literally doesn't get any better at all. So the three left Colleen there and returned back to their dorms, each one signing back in. Pike wasn't really that smart, though, as the next day she began showing that piece of skull off around school. She made sure to show her friend Kim the piece of skull, and then proceeded to recount in horrible detail how they had tortured and killed Colleen.
When you say piece of skull, do you mean like the bone?
Yeah, like legit a piece of her skull. So Kim recounts that when Pike was telling her about the events from that night, she was dancing around in a circle, smiling and singing. Kim also recounts that the previous day, Pike had told her that she wanted to kill another student because she, quote, just felt mean that day. Pike also told another student, quote, that ain't mud on my shoes, that's blood. Also showing her her trophy.
Oh my god.
Neither Kim nor the other student told anyone what Pike had told them beforehand. This information eventually did come out in trial. But at 8 a.m. on January 13th, so the next day, the Knoxville Police and the University of Tennessee Police Department received a call to the greenhouse that sat on the agricultural campus of the University of Tennessee. An employee had found what he at first believed to be animal remains, but upon closer inspection, the employee saw clothing and skin. That is when he immediately called authorities. And I'm sure you've guessed it, they were not animal remains, they're the remains of Colleen Slemmer. So another graphic description coming up. She had been found nude from the waist up.
Oh my god.
Her throat had been cut and her head had been bludgeoned. To sum up how awful her injuries were, the responding officer to the scene said that he thought he was looking at the victim's face but couldn't be sure as her body had been so mutilated.
Oh my god.
It was so bad that she had to be ID'd by dental records. An autopsy was performed by Dr. Sandra Elkins, the Knox County medical examiner. A lot was found during this autopsy. So again, really sad. So during the exam, it was found that Colleen had been tortured before she had been killed due to the appearance of the wounds. She indicated tragically that Colleen had probably been alive and conscious when the head injuries had been inflicted. And another awful little note I learned. So when an autopsy is performed, they obviously have to make note of all the wounds, stab wounds, slash wounds, anything. They start at A and go through the alphabet accordingly. Colleen had so many wounds that the pathologist performing her autopsy ran out of single letters and had to start labeling wounds as AA, BB, CC.
Oh my god.
There were so many superficial slash wounds found on her arms and chest that Elkins wasn't even able to count them all. Colleen also had bruising on her knees and defensive wounds on her right hand. The cause of death was officially ruled as blunt force trauma to the head. The medical examiner also confirmed that part of Colleen's skull was indeed missing. And because of this, only 36 hours later, the three, Christa Pike, Daryl Shipp, and Shadala Peterson, were arrested. The evidence that they were arrested on is as follows. So 4 individuals signed out of the dorms that night of the incident, but only 3 signed back in. This was confirmed both by a witness's statement and checking the logs.
Oh my god, that's like so easy.
Right.
Like, it's like practically handed to them on a silver platter.
Right. A satanic Bible was found in Daryl's room, which connects to the pentagram found on Colleen. And I put this pun, and then I said, it comes out of respect. So the big piece was the piece of skull. I put in parentheses, it comes with all the respect. I know that's so bad. Maybe we'll take that out. No, it's so good. I feel so bad. It comes with all the respect.
We're just trying to bring light to a
Yes,
very dark
yes.
story.
Gallows humor. So the piece of skull was found in Pike's jacket pocket. So really gross. So with the jacket, on January 13th, the day after the murder, Pike had apparently left her jacket in a counselor's office. That counselor soon learned that Pike had been suspected of being involved in a murder, so he turned that jacket over to the police.
Oof.
Just in case it was needed for evidence.
Yeah.
And that's where the piece of the skull was found, in the pocket of the jacket. Though there was plenty of evidence, it wasn't necessarily needed to convict, as when in an interview with police, Pike confessed to killing Colleen and even consented to a search of her dorm room. So this is where the police found a pair of bloodstained jeans. Then they found Colleen's ID and gloves in Pike's trash can. And she also took the police to the location where Colleen's body was.
Oh my God.
Usually when someone confesses, they write down their confession or have it recorded. Pike's confession, after transcription, was 46 pages long.
Oh my God.
So some big points from her confession are as follows, and yes, some of these I already mentioned earlier, but her confession obviously goes into more detail. So she said that she and Colleen had been having problems with each other for some time. They liked the same guy, to Daryl. Apparently, Colleen had even threatened Pike with a box cutter at one point. So Pike claimed to have been awoken one night to find Colleen standing over her bed with a box cutter. The day of the killing, Pike claimed she only planned to fight Colleen, who had been, quote, running her mouth. She just wanted Colleen to leave her alone. At one point, Pike tried to say that they just wanted to scare Colleen, but it had gotten out of hand. Yeah, it got out of hand.
No shit.
Then she goes into the assault, which we sort of went into, so I'm not going to go into the graphic details because they're graphic. Her confession can be found anywhere if you want to read more. But Pike said that the more Colleen begged, the angrier she got. When the assault started, Colleen kept asking, "Why are you doing this to me?" The two others, Daryl and Shadola, were apparently just watching the whole time while Pike was attacking Colleen. But at one point, Colleen did make a break for it and tried to escape, only to be pulled back by one of the two watching and thrown back down onto the ground. In her confession, Pike stated that she had heard voices, and those voices told her that she had to do something to keep Colleen from going to the police and sending her to prison for attempted murder. So instead of going to prison for attempted murder, just go for murder.
Full-on murder.
At one point, while begging for her life, Colleen said that she would, quote, walk back to her home in Florida without returning to the Job Corps facility for her belongings. Like, she just wanted to get out. She didn't want any trouble. To which Pike told her to shut up and replied with, "It's hard to hurt someone when they're talking to you."
Oh my God.
When it was clear Colleen was dead, Pike, along with the other two, dragged Colleen's body to an area near some woods where they left it in a pile of dirt and debris. So that was enough of a confession, and paired with the evidence that was found, Pike's case went to trial. The trial took place on March 22nd, 1996, so over a year later. The jurors were able to read the 46-page statement that Pike had made, as well as listen to the recorded version of it. They were also shown a picture that had been taken of Pike and Shipp on January 14th, 1995, just days after the murder. The pair was smiling while wearing pentagram necklaces. A reconstruction of Colleen's skull was shown to the jury. They noticed how there was a missing piece of it. At that point, Dr. Sandra Elkins, the medical examiner who had performed the autopsy, revealed to the jury that a piece of skull had been confiscated from Pike and that it was a perfect match. So obviously, psychiatrists examined Pike and their information and results were included during the trial. Dr. Eric Engum, a clinical psychologist, was the one to testify for the defense and shared what he had concluded with his interviews. He found that Pike had a high IQ of about 111 and that she was an extremely bright young woman.
I feel like that's a lot. Like the truly sick and twisted tend to have a very high IQ.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you brought that up in when you were talking about like the characteristics of bombers yesterday or the other day, too.
Yesterday.
I edited it yesterday. Yes. So her IQ is actually surprising to Engum, considering her upbringing and the fact that she was a dropout, having only completed 9th grade. They found no sign of brain damage and found that she was not, quote, insane. Though, other reports said she did have brain damage with the whole frontal lobe not being fully formed. Yeah, so there's kind of like back and forth debates on that. It was found that Pike was marijuana and cannabis dependent. Is that a thing?
I mean, you can become dependent on just about anything.
That's true. And that she abused inhalants. And at this point, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which can be very dangerous if not properly treated. The psychiatrist said that those with borderline personality disorder have poor impulse control, a volatile affect, a, quote, fluctuating self-image that bounces between despair and self-aggrandizement. That's probably not right, but...
That's an SAT word.
Yeah. And they usually have problems in relationships. Again, not everyone with borderline personality disorder is like this, but in Pike's case, it all rings true.
Well, and especially if she's not getting it treated, and she lives in the kind of home that she lives in.
Yep.
That's just, 3 strikes you're out.
Criminologist Catherine Ramsland compared Pike to a vampire, saying that she would drain a therapist and move on to the next, making her resistant to treatment. And that at this point in her life, she was too old and too far along to be able to change, and that she'll continue to be a danger to society until she's too old and too feeble to be dangerous.
Oh my God.
Ramsfield said that even she wouldn't turn her back on Pike, which means, like, not that she wouldn't help her, like, she doesn't trust her, and she does think that Pike would also hurt other people. Dr. Engram said that the murder hadn't been premeditated, but that Pike had acted in manner with borderline personality disorder with the loss of control. But he also said that he is aware that Pike lured Slummer to the location and had thought ahead enough to bring weapons with her, being the box cutter and the meat cleaver.
Right.
So again, slightly contradicting there.
Yeah.
Pike was deemed to be sane in legal terms and fit to stand trial. After hearing all of the evidence that had been presented, it only took the jury a few hours, I think it was like 2.5 hours, to deliberate. They found Christa Pike guilty on 1 count of murder and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. Then 8 days later, on March 28, 1996, Pike was sentenced to death by electrocution for the murder charge and 25 years in prison for the conspiracy charge, which I thought it was interesting that she already got death, but then they gave her 25 years.
Yeah, that doesn't make
You know
any
what I mean?
sense.
Yeah. Tadaryl Shipp received a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2028. Shadola Peters.
Oh my God, that's so soon.
I know. When
Holy
you
shit.
read these cases from forever ago and they're like, oh, this parole is coming up, you're like, that's soon.
I was watching, I don't know, I was watching something on Hulu. Like, they have a whole bunch of, like, forensic files, FBI files,
Yeah.
whatever, that I'll just play through them. And it was whatever it was. And it was like, oh, they'll get out in, I think it was like 2017. Because the case they were talking about was from, like, the 80s or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, that means they're out.
Right.
That's now. They're not in jail anymore.
They were walking free.
Right.
Yeah, it was like when I did the case for Wisconsin, the Slender Man murders, I was looking at some article from like years and years ago, and it was like, oh, in June of 2021, they're going to be released. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So I like typed it up, and on that day they were having the trial, I was like, oh my God. It's just weird.
Wild.
Yeah. So Shadola Peterson received only a six-year probation sentence, but this was after she became an informant and also after she had pled guilty to being an accessory. So the sentencing phase was next, and many different family members testified about Pike's childhood and adolescence, all speaking about the troubled childhood she had. The main takeaway was that Pike had been out of control from a young age, and at that, the defense rested its case. In rebuttal, the state called on Harold James Underwood Jr. He was a University of Tennessee police officer who had been the one to secure the crime scene on January 13th, 1995. So his testimony is a bit morbid. He said that between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. on January 13th, the day he was securing the crime scene and all that, Pike showed up with 3 to 5 other females. Keep in mind, this is before she was considered a suspect. Underwood said that Pike was asking him questions like why the area was being marked off and asking about the identity of the victim and if the police had any suspects yet. Underwood said that only Pike was talking. None of the other girls who were accompanying her were asking any questions. They were all remaining very quiet. He said that Pike appeared amused and was giggling and moving around while she was there. He also noticed that she was wearing a pentagram necklace. He made note of it because he said it was just a very unusual-looking necklace. Underwood said that during roll call the next day, they had learned that the victim had a pentagram carved on her chest. This is when he immediately reported Pike's odd behavior and strange necklace from the day prior. So after this phase of hearing, the jury came to the conclusion that 2 aggravating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt had been met in this case. So the first was, the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel in that it involved torture or serious physical abuse beyond that necessary to produce death. And the second was, the murder was committed for the purpose of avoiding, interfering with, or preventing a lawful arrest or prosecution of the defendant or another. So, as a result of this, and of the jury finding that the state had proven that the aggregating circumstances outweighed any mitigating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt, the jury sentenced the defendant to death by electrocution. So all other powers within the court agreed. So the jury
Why
comes
not
up...
lethal injection? Because I thought, like, with places that still have the death penalty, wouldn't electrocution...
This happened in the 90s.
Oh, that's true.
So it could have been, like,
know.
electrocution was the way to do it in the 90s.
It just seems so recent. I feel like electrocution would have been considered cruel and unusual punishment.
Well, that's why the death penalty now has the whole Eighth Amendment thing, which is the cruel and unusual punishment. So...
Oh, that was after this?
No, but this is the post-Furman thing, the post-Furman era, so that's why people thought this was like... It's like this whole thing. I'll get into it in a little bit. So they ended the court documents with, quote, "The defendant's sentence of death by electrocution is affirmed. The sentence shall be carried out as provided by law on the 5th day of February, 1999, unless otherwise ordered by this court or other proper authorities." So at one point while in prison, Pike wrote a letter to her boyfriend, I assume Ship, where she said, quote, "You see what I get for trying to be nice to the hoe? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'll die quickly instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more. And they fucking fry me. Ain't that some shit?" Just take a moment to reflect on that. Right. Right. So Pike tried to...
Sometimes people really just, like, don't seem real.
Right.
Like,
right.
They just don't seem real.
Like, I did her a favor by killing her quicker. Like, no. So Pike tried to appeal her conviction, but after launching the appeal, she canceled it only to launch it again. And going against her lawyers, in June of 2001 and June of 2002, Pike spoke to the courts and asked them to drop her appeal. She wanted to go straight to her execution. Criminal Court Judge Mary Beth Leibowitz granted her request, and an execution date of August 19th, 2002 was set for Pike. But shortly after the date was set for her execution, Pike changed her mind. On July 8th, 2002, her lawyers filed a motion to let the appeal process continue, but that motion was denied. But just 17 days before her execution, a state appeals court ruled that the appeals process could proceed and the execution was called off. So there's a lot of back and forth of, like, when her execution date is, when this is.
What did it say? Why she kept calling it off?
It was just, I think I get to it a little bit later.
Okay.
But pretty much they were trying to say, like, it's cruel and unusual that you're going to, electrocute her. And they kept trying to have a investigation that showed, like, this is cruel and unusual.
So it was more of the method than it was the actual being put to death?
And a couple things I'll get to why I think another reason.
Okay.
So remember, she's still on death row. And in December of 2008, she tried to request a new trial, but that was denied and she remained on death row. But in May of 2014, her lawyers did enter an appeal in the federal court system. Her lawyers tried to get her sentence changed from death to life in prison. They tried to say that Pike's counsel had failed her, that their original work during her original trial had been so awful, that's why she was convicted.
Yeah, that's why.
They said that Pike suffered from mental illness, and they said that the death penalty put forward was unconstitutional due to her age at the time of the crime.
And what year was this that these appeals were going on?
This one particularly was made in 2014.
Okay, so I looked up when the last electrocution thing, and it said the last person to be executed by electric chair without the choice of an alternative method, so I guess without a choice, was Linda Lynn Block on May 10th, 2002 in Alabama.
Oh, wow. So this ruling was made, this other ruling was made on May 11th, 2016, and all of those grounds that this appeal was put on were rejected. So they said, like, she doesn't have mental illness, she knew what she was doing, the counsel didn't fail her, kind of all that stuff. So one fact that the defense kept trying to push.
So was she, when she's on death row, because that sentencing came first, and then the 25 years.
Yeah.
She's not serving the 25 years first. It's just because of these appeals.
Yes, yeah. So the appeals keep pushing back her sentence. But you will eventually run out of appeals. That's why they had to bring it to the federal court, because they ran out of appeals in the state of Tennessee.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So one fact they kept trying to push. So Ship was sentenced to life in prison, not the death penalty. He wasn't the mastermind behind the whole trial, but her team was trying to say that he didn't get the death penalty because he was only 17 at the time of the crime, while Christa was 18, just by a few months. So the difference between 17 and 18 was the death penalty. So had she been 17 at the time of her crime, it would have been life in prison.
Right.
But because she was 18, just a couple months older than her boyfriend, she gets she gets the death penalty. So people were kind of saying, like, her brain wasn't that much more developed than when she was 17. Like, brains don't even develop fully until you're closer to 20. How can you try her as an adult when her boyfriend who was there did less? But he also wasn't the mastermind and she was, I am in a very gray area with the death penalty.
I think it depends.
Yeah.
Like,
that's why I'm in such a gray area with it.
I think it's not so much like agreeing with the death penalty, because when you say it like that, it's like, okay, well, we're now trying this person and saying that them killing people on purpose, which is essentially what the death penalty is wrong. And so in that aspect, and there are some times that I feel like getting the death penalty is an easy way out.
Yep, because then they don't have to be in jail.
Like, jail's fucking miserable.
Right.
And I'm like, I want you to live a miserable life because you've caused misery. And it's
I also read somewhere it's cheaper to just house a criminal in jail until they die rather than doing one of the death penalty things.
And we wouldn't have such an incarceration problem if our justice system wasn't a piece of shit.
Well, that too. That's the big one.
So.
Yep. But there may also be another reason that none of her appeals have amounted to anything, because on August 24th, 2001, she was involved in yet another awful incident.
Oh, jeez.
While in jail, Pike and another inmate named Natasha Cornett attacked and attempted to kill another inmate named Patricia Jones. They tried to strangle her with a shoestring and were actually very close to succeeding. So, side note, Natasha Cornett is the main awful person who was part of a different true crime story that I was reading about, the Lillelid murders, which is also satanic and occult and has like that underlying to it. Yeah, but I ended up doing this one because that one made me really sad. So this one made me sad too, but that one involved a little child and
no.
I couldn't do it.
Can't do that.
Nope. So I looked at that and I said, oh, this could be interesting. And then I saw that the child was involved and I said, nah, I can't do that today.
Yeah.
So on August 12, 2004, Pike was again convicted, and this time the charge was attempted first-degree murder. An investigation was, of course, launched, and it was believed that Natasha Cornett never actually helped Pike and that she had attacked Jones on her own. Pike received an additional 25 years added onto her sentence for this attempted murder. Now that is an appealing addition to her case.
That's a good one. That was good.
Thank you.
Much better than the other ones.
Yeah. Such a stupid joke. I'm coming up. Okay. Sometime in March of 2012, it was revealed that Pike was attempting to escape. She must have been allergic to prison as it was causing her to break out. Her potential prison break was thwarted by the Tennessee Department of Corrections, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and the New Jersey State Police. I tried to think of some really good pun for that. Nothing was coming to mind. So her plan was going to involve Justin Heflin, corrections officer at the prison, and Donald Kohut, a 34-year-old man from New Jersey. No one knows for sure how the two started communicating, but somehow Kohut and Pike started a written correspondence with each other at the beginning of 2011.
So she's still in Tennessee, and this guy's in New Jersey.
Uh-huh. And they're writing, like pen pals. I think he was just the first one to bite because Pike had lovers all over the country.
Lovers?
Yeah, like people she would write letters to, pen pals. One of these love letters she wrote included the words, quote, I want to lick your soul.
Lick your soul.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I've never had a desire to lick anything.
No, I haven't either. By July, Kohut was driving close to 1,800 miles, 2,896 kilometers round trip from Flemington, New Jersey to Nashville, Tennessee, where Pike was being held. He would do this 1 to 2 times a month. Gross. It was actually...
Just fucking fly.
Right.
Like...
Maybe it's cheap. It is cheaper to drive.
I guess.
So it was actually Kohut who formulated the escape plan for Pike, even locking in Justin Heflin, the corrections officer at the facility, to help in exchange for cash and gifts like canoes and a guitar. So the plan wasn't made public due to security concerns, obviously, but it involved tracing a key. So they would trace one of the keys, make a copy of that key, and then use it to escape. But the plan wasn't far along when it was discovered, so they didn't even get to that point.
I feel like instead of tracing it, if you're going to try to make a copy of it, get like Play-Doh or something.
Or have the corrections officer who can leave the prison just go make a copy.
Well, do they bring their keys?
I assume.
Oh, I figured that they would.
Or as a correction officer, you can sneak so many things in there.
No, I know. I just figured they probably wouldn't be able to bring the keys in case they got lost or whatever. I don't know. And if you're going to make a copy of a key, don't trace it. Get fucking Play-Doh.
Right. Right. Because if you trace it, something's going to... They're stupid.
Right.
So...
Obviously. They got caught.
Yeah. Kohut was arrested in March of 2012 and was charged with bribery and conspiracy to commit escape. He was then sentenced to 7 years. He was having a hard time. Heflin was also arrested and charged with bribery, official misconduct, and conspiracy to commit escape. He was not sentenced, but he did lose his job, obviously. And arrest is history. Okay, so some updates. On August 27th, 2020, the Tennessee Attorney General's office requested that an execution date be set for Pike. But then COVID, so an extension for a decision was made. So it got extended. An update from the Knox News article dated June 2021 says that the Tennessee Attorney General's office is asking the High Court to finally set an execution date for Pike, but her defense team is still trying to argue, saying that it's too soon. It's been like 27 years since this murder. Like, I don't think it's too soon.
Yeah, she's already done her time for the first charge.
Right! Ew, that's a good point. But Pike's attorney was trying to see if they could commute her sentence to life, either with or without parole.
What do you mean with or without?
Right. So they want more time as well to continue an investigation to see if Pike's human rights were violated. So that's what I was saying earlier. But, like, violated how? She brutally tortured and murdered someone. I don't think her rights are being violated with her being in jail, but maybe they're talking about the death penalty.
She literally confessed in detail.
Right. So I feel like maybe they're trying to say that the human rights are being violated with the death penalty, but they didn't really go into much of that.
I mean, that I could see, but you're kind of grasping at straws.
So as of today, it has not been decided yet about Pike's fate, but if they do decide to execute her, she will be the first woman executed in Tennessee in roughly 200 years.
Wow.
So I looked up some prison puns, and some of them are so bad and so inappropriate. So if one's like really inappropriate, tell me no and I'll cut it.
Okay.
So I just found a lot. I was in hysterics at work. It was so bad. A man called his twin brother from prison. Hey, remember when we were kids and used to finish each other's sentences?
That's a good one.
After my wife died, I couldn't look at women for 20 years. But when I got out of prison, it was totally worth it. A concrete mixer and a prison bus crashed on the highway. Police advised citizens to be on the lookout for a group of hardened criminals. And this one's the last one, but it's funny. 2 prisoners are working in the laundry room on the top floor of a jail. After a couple hours, the guard on duty steps away to use the bathroom. The one prisoner says, "Quick, this is our chance to escape. We only have a few minutes, so have to work together. You rip bed sheets into strips, and I'll tie them into a rope, and we can climb down through the window." The other agrees. "Got it. I sheet, you not."
That was my favorite one.
And since this comes out the day before your birthday, I was like, I'll throw in a couple extra
oh my God,
puns.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Happy
realized
birthday to me.
Happy birthday to you.
Whoop, whoop. I think I didn't think about it because we're going to also record the day before.
Yeah. It
So-
gets very confusing with the dates in my head, too.
I was like, as I was writing this, I was like, I have no idea. Are we at the end of November already? Should I still keep using puns? Like, I'm not sure where we're at.
My friend at Orange Theory, he listens, and he'll sometimes ask me, he's like, "Oh, what episode was released this week?" And I'm like, because I have to think, like, what are we releasing? What did I just edit? What am I researching right now?
I was talking to my mom last night. I was like, yeah, like, I got to just finish up some research for the podcast. And she was like, well, is there anything I can help you with? I was like, no. And I was kind of going into what I was doing. And I was like, yeah, she's in... What state are we in? What are we doing?
Right.
Tennessee. That's where she is.
That's what
like,
yep. I think the same stuff.
So whenever people are like, oh, when you said blah, 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 I'm like...
I can't remember it half the time.
It's like we recorded a week before the episode came out. So I'm certainly not going to remember what happened a week ago, let alone whenever you happen to listen to the episode.
Yeah, I have a coworker who will like sometimes message me. It'll be like months after an episode comes out. He's like, "Oh my God, ha ha ha." Then he'll say something. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, that's what I meant.
He's like, "Oh, this part of the episode when you said this." I was like, "Oh, yes. Now I remember."
I think it's worse because I don't listen to it.
You don't re-listen to it. Yeah. I do. So I do hear some of the stuff. But yeah, if I didn't re-listen to it,
and I also
don't
know what you keep in and what you take out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one,
so
too.
When they start, I can't remember. I don't know. Someone said something, and I was like, she kept that in?
There are some things, if it makes me laugh while I listen to it, I keep it in. Oh, my favorite thing is like when one of us says something and we laughed when we're recording, and then I'll listen back and I laugh again. I'm like, oh, wow, I've always thought this was funny.
It's almost like it's confirming, yes, this was funny.
Right.
We weren't just weird. Wow. Very interesting story.
Yes, I felt like I hadn't done true crime in a really long time. And so I was
just thinking the same thing.
Right, yeah. So I was like looking up like these guy murderers, and I was like, and then I just like decided to look up the female stuff, and I found her, and I was like, oh, this is so sad. And I was like, but I'm going to tell it because
it's interesting.
It is interesting. And all the occult stuff, and like I just felt like I had to include all of it. So it was definitely wild to research.
Mm-hmm. Could see that.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
I'd love to tell you. So my story today might ring a bell with people who are native to the Nashville, Tennessee, and its surrounding areas. This is America's most researched haunting in history.
Oh.
I didn't say most haunted. I just said most researched.
Oh, very
haunting.
different.
So you can decide if the legend of the Bell Witch...
Oh, I'm so excited.
Did you get it? Ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I knew what you're talking about, so you said I understood.
Okay. So you can decide if you think it is fact or fiction. Also, every time that I say witch, which is a lot during this story, as in like WHICH.
Oh, yeah.
Like which one.
Uh-huh.
You can just assume that I mean it's a pun for witch. Because the amount of times that I say witch, I'm like, I can't even include any other pun in here because I say witch so many times.
That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Mackenzie today, I text her, I was like, I have 8 puns. I'm really excited. And Mackenzie goes, I have to explain my puns to you when I see you.
Like, as I was writing it, I said, wow, okay, every time you say witch, that's what the person's going to think of, and then they're going to laugh. And so I just put a disclaimer at the front that you can assume that every time I say witch, I mean it as a pun.
Perfect.
So, because those are the only real puns in here.
My coworker drew a witch on my whiteboard, and it says Lauren the Witch. And he put, like, witch please after I told him what our episode title was.
Nice.
So now I just have a little witch on my whiteboard.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a very stick figure drawing of me with curly hair and a witch hat. Oh, and a wand.
Ah,
of course.
gotta have the wand. So,
Okay.
let's start with the legend itself.
Ooh, I am so excited for this.
Good. I'm glad. I'm excited to tell it. So in the early 1800s, John Bell moved his family from North Carolina to Red River, now Adams, Tennessee. He had acquired over 300 acres in farmland where he lived until his death in 1820. Around 1817 is when troubles really began for the Bells. The legend says that one evening John Bell saw a strange creature. It had a body of a dog with a head of a rabbit.
Of a rabbit?
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
When Bell tried to shoot at it, the animal disappeared, and after that, the family is said to have heard mysterious sounds happening during the night. They said that the covers would be ripped off their beds.
I don't like that.
Children said that it sounded like rats were scratching at their bedposts. The torment was particularly problematic for John Bell and his daughter Betsy. John had become ill and was having trouble swallowing and would have seizure-type episodes. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell died after slipping into a coma earlier that day. Supposedly, his son found a small bottle of poison near his father. The Bell witch said that she had poisoned Mr. Bell to kill him.
Okay.
They tested the poison by giving some to a cat, and a few minutes later, it died.
No!
Yeah. Cat got its tongue.
I guess it didn't have 9 lives.
Nope. The family threw the rest of the poison and the vial into the fireplace, which apparently caused the flame to turn blue and shoot up into the chimney.
Ooh.
So, the witch also tormented Betsy Bell while she was engaged to be married to Joshua Gardner. The witch would pull her hair, slap her face, leave
Oh my
marks.
God.
Yeah, not nice. Not nice.
Can we, like, see the witch? Like, is the witch, like, a person?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's just a voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then does shit.
So it's just, like, invisible slaps.
Yeah.
Ow.
After her father's death, Betsy called off her engagement with Joshua. The witch supposedly told Lucy Bell, who's John's widow, that she would return in 7 years. Supposedly she returned in 1828, where she supposedly spent most of her time with John Bell Jr., and after staying for 3 weeks, left again, promising to return in 107 years. No reports ever surfaced that she did come back. However, some say she never left.
What year was it?
1820.
Oh.
8-ish.
Oh.
1820s.
Okay.
So who is the Bell Witch? Well, that depends on which version of the legend that you would prefer to go with as the truth. Think of it as a choose-your-own-adventure.
Oh.
So most legends say that she was some sort of old witchy neighbor who was supposedly upset with John Bell over some sort of property sale.
Mm-hmm.
What that property sale is, like I said, depends on the choose-your-own-adventure you decide. So when this tormenting spirit became stronger, she supposedly started responding to the name Kate.
Is that your favorite word?
Supposedly?
Yeah.
Well, in this one it is, because the amount of different information I had to use supposedly. It may be, kind of. It could be.
Yeah.
Because who knows?
Potentially.
So supposedly and witch are in here a lot.
Okay. So be prepared.
Right, exactly. I'll try to, use synonyms. One version goes that because news spread of the family's misfortune, people from all over came to see this ordeal. The more people that came, the stronger it became.
Mm-hmm.
Kate Batts, who was supposedly this neighbor and that was supposedly this witch, denied it was her. Supposedly. But you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So how did this information spread? Well, John and his family were quite distraught over this. After all, we are only 125 years after the Salem witch trials.
Mm-hmm.
John Bell eventually shared his experiences with some close friends, and they went to a preacher for help, or it might have been a neighbor. One version tells of his friend and his neighbor and his wife staying the night at the Bell's house, and during the day everything was fine. But then once the evening rolled around, that's when the strange things started happening. Covers were ripped off. Men were slapped. The neighbor said that Bell had something evil in his home. Either way, whether it was the preacher coming in, who knows? The news spread of the paranormal, and people traveled from all over to see this witch.
Naturally, yes.
As you would.
As you would.
Mm-hmm. Some say she was only nice to Lucy Bell, John's wife. One report I read said that there is a genealogy connection between Lucy Bell and Kate Batts.
Oh.
Kate was Lucy's niece from her brother's marriage. So Lucy had a brother.
Uh-huh.
His daughter, Kate.
Okay. Yep, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when people explain family stuff, I'm like, wait.
Yeah. No clear reason as to why she hated the children and John. I mean, maybe the property thing for John. No one knows why the witch was so against Betsy marrying Joshua either.
Mm-hmm.
Just that she was. Oh, there's also this part, supposedly, that Andrew Jackson came, the president.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Before he was president. Duh.
Okay. Yeah, of course, yes.
So, comes to visit the Bell home, and at the time he was this general. He had served with one of the children during some battle in New Orleans. I mean, I think the War of 1812. When I was looking at the dates, I was like, that's got to be the War of 1812.
That would make sense.
It's not the Civil War yet.
In the 1800s, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When him and his men arrived, their horses stopped, would not move forward, until this loud booming voice told them that they could pass. And so they went further.
Ew.
I would have turned around, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'm hearing a loud booming voice, like, bye.
Mm-hmm. So that night, one of his men was bragging about having the silver bullet, so the witch could not possibly be afraid of him.
Of course not.
And she was obviously none too pleased about that and began tormenting the man. And so they may have left at this point. They may have stayed. But they didn't stay very long. Oh, and there's also a cave. It still sits on the property, has no significance to the legend itself, but strange things happen there. So it's going to get an honorable mention.
Of course, yes.
I cannot speak today. So that's kind of the background.
Okay.
So this is the fun part.
Okay.
We're going to go with the skeptic adventure.
Oh.
And then we're going to go to the believer adventure.
Okay.
So we're going to start with the skeptics, just because they're losers.
Right.
And one person's story I tell is so fascinating and so funny that it's like, just kind of makes you want to believe the legend even more.
Okay.
So something to keep in mind is that this legend is 200 years old.
Right, yeah.
So, and the thing is, well, no, I'll get to that. So Pat Fitzhugh, who is an author of the most recent Bell Witch publication and is obsessed, described this legend as controversy after controversy after controversy. There is never a dull moment. That is a direct quote.
Nice.
So, it starts off with the Ingram fabrication theory. So this man named Martin Ingram was the first person to officially publish this whole to-do about this witch. Well, because people could not find anything before, and he published it in 1896.
I was going to say 1980s.
Sorry, 1896. So 75 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like too far off.
Yeah. We're still in the
Still
ballpark.
enough people could be around to lay claims to
or at
things.
least have heard of it.
Right. To have heard of it, to
have
maybe
relatives,
secondhand stories,
right.
that kind of thing. But the idea being that because nothing is before this publication, that he made it all up.
Okay.
So there was no Bell Witch. He just made up a story. So we're going to go from there. So in the book, he uses interviews with various people at the time who had experiences with the Bell Witch. The people he interviewed are listed in the book, and all of them are reports from people who knew. So it's like, I know someone who had an experience at this place.
But no one is talking
there
about
was
firsthand
no
experience.
firsthand.
Okay.
None firsthand.
Yep.
So
my brother's sister's wife's cousin had an experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So no interviews have been done with the family members or firsthand accounts. In fact, it was pretty much expressed that everywhere the family did not want people to know about this.
Mm-hmm.
They're very embarrassed.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah.
Bible Belt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not a fan. And no interviews had ever been done with any family members to get firsthand accounts. However, there is a chapter in the book that is supposedly from a diary, journal, whatever, taken from John Bell Jr.,
Okay.
who wrote about all the problems that the family experienced. However, so Junior gave it to his son, and then the son gave it to this guy,
Mm-hmm.
but said that nothing could be written about this story until the last immediate family member died, which would have been Betsy.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the thing is, though, is this book, this journal, this thing's never been produced.
Okay.
There's no physical copy of it anywhere.
Yeah.
So, is it real? Is it made up? They don't know because by the time any family could attest to it, they're all dead.
Right.
So, anyway, also, Kate Batts being the witch. She was alive at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, how could she be tormenting this family if she's alive?
Right.
She can't haunt things if she's not dead.
I have heard a theory. It is kind of like that. So, I have heard a theory that sometimes people have said that if you experience like a really bad trauma somewhere and like you live, part of your soul chips off and part of your soul now remains at this place where you had this trauma. And then your soul is that part of your soul that kind of chipped off and died, that's what's haunting that area.
But she still lived there.
But so you could technically be haunted by yourself from this trauma that you experienced that now has this dark energy at this place. So that part is haunting you.
Well,
probably not related to this. It was just a cool thing I heard somewhere. That
would be understandable.
Yeah.
However, a lot of the sources said that she wasn't even that mad.
Oh.
Like, she didn't...
So there was no trauma for the soul to chip off.
No. And it was just like she was alive. Something that was also interesting when they were sharing this was that, like, the whole Andrew Jackson thing probably would have been a record of it. But
I mean, maybe if he wasn't president then.
Okay, so that's what I said.
Yeah.
The guy in the video was like, he is president. They would know where, they are at all times. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And I was like, wait a minute. So I looked up when Andrew Jackson was president.
Yeah.
It was 1820 something.
Yeah.
After this happened, after she was gone. And I was like, given the fact that it was the 1800s, I highly doubt his travels prior to presidency were really all that recorded.
Like, no one's going to care beforehand.
Right.
It's like one of those things, like, why would it be something you're looking at if you don't know that it's going to be important in the future? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So,
like, his travel before he's president is just to do traveling.
Well, I do still think it's bullshit. I do not think that Andrew Jackson showed up at this house. I think there could be better reasons made for it besides that one.
Yeah.
Also, Ingram, who's the author of this book, was a promoter. So there was like an author and a promoter, and Ingram was more so a promoter. Although there's really no mention of the other guy all that much. So apparently they were part of this group that was trying to create the most fantastical story. So maybe to sell the book.
Yeah.
This kind of took off. Does that mean it was their motive all along? Were they just trying to make a profit?
That adds a little bit of, raised eyebrows to it.
Fair enough. Interesting aside. So I'm watching this mini documentary on the Bell Witch, and they included skeptics.
As they do, yes.
As they do. That's where I got most of this from. And they were stating various reasons for why it wasn't a thing, self-fulfilling prophecies. People are going to find what they're looking for. One lady actually made a pretty valid point. A legend being 200 years old and predominantly from word of mouth, different variations of the legend are going to make it relatable, therefore believable.
Yep.
However,
and it'll probably change slightly to be more relatable in the time.
Right. However, this woman shared her own story. And I was like, bitch, you believe it.
Right.
You 100% believe it. So, she's going on and on about how when she was a little girl, she was staying at her grandmother's, and she had woke up in the middle of the night, and she was going down to the kitchen, and she sees this spirit entity thing.
Okay.
Freaks out, screams. At first thought it was like the neighbor boy trying to freak them out, although I was like, how the fuck is he going to get in? But that's my mentality.
Sometimes people don't lock their doors.
Right. And that's what I started thinking about was the time, the place, whatever. So, freaking out, grandma comes, what's wrong? Just a bad dream. Go back to bed. Okay, cool. But she can't stop thinking about it. So she goes back downstairs.
I would not.
I put it in there. Could never be me. And sees it again. So while she's having this interview, she is saying things like, but it was just a dream. It was just a nightmare. It was probably just a nightmare. Although to me, it was so vivid and so real. But, it was probably just a dream. And I'm like, who are you trying to convince?
Yeah, you're trying to convince yourself it was just a dream. Yeah.
I was like, I believe you. I bet you saw it.
Us people here, we believe you.
But you've been now titled as a skeptic, so you got to be skeptical.
Right.
So, there you go.
Your own undoing.
Your own undoing. So that's the skeptic route.
Okay, not very fun.
No.
Skeptics, not very fun.
No. But the believer adventure, it's a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of stuff.
That's where we go.
Hell yeah. Okay. So, there is no denying that the details of the story are anything but clear. However, there are a few things that remain true throughout whatever version you decide to go with.
Okay.
The Bell family was tormented by a witch named Kate.
Mm-hmm.
Who that Kate was, who the fuck knows? Okay. Also, well, no, I'll get to that later. So, here are some accounts from various people who have had experiences with the Bell Witch, or these are excerpts from people who knew about this phenomena happening.
Okay.
Okay. So, Charles Bailey Bell, who is the grandson of John Bell Jr., shared that his great aunt Betsy, the girl Betsy, would tell him stories about this witch. One account was of a young boy who had gotten his head stuck between two rocks in the Bell Witch Cave. So this cave was on their property, which is why it was deemed that name.
Yeah.
Spooky things happen there. It's not any part of the legend itself. It's just that spooky things happen there.
Yeah.
So
and it's a cave, so caves are spooky.
Right, exactly. So they named it the Bell Witch Cave because it was on the Bell's property.
Makes sense, yes.
So this little boy screaming for help, no one could hear him, hears a strange noise and felt a tugging sensation, and he was freed by the Bell Witch.
Well, she seems very sweet.
That's what I'm saying. So, remember how I told you that part of this idea was that nothing existed before Ingram's book? Okay. So, Godspeed Brothers' 1886 History of Tennessee records a short little blurb. So I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
Remember, 1886, book was published 1896.
Okay.
Just saying. A remarkable occurrence which attracted widespread interest was connected with the family of John Bell, who settled near the town, what is now Adams Station, about 1804. So great was the excitement that people came from hundreds of miles around to witness the manifestations of what was popularly known as the Bell Witch. This witch was supposed to be some supernatural being having the voice and attributes of a woman. It was invisible to the eye, yet it would hold conversation and shake hands with certain individuals. The freaks it performed were wonderful and seemingly designed to annoy the family. It would take the sugar from the bowls, spill the milk, take the quilts from the bed, slap and pinch the children, and then laugh at the discomfort of its victims. At first, it was supposed to be a good spirit, but its subsequent acts, together with the curses with which it supplemented its remarks, proved the contrary. A volume might be written concerning the performances of this wonderful being, as they are now described by contemporaries and their descendants. All this actually occurred will not be disputed, nor will a rational explanation be attempted. It is merely introduced and is an example of superstition strong in the minds of all, but few in those times, and not yet wholly extinct.
A lot of words.
A lot of words. Fancy words.
Yeah.
Written in the wrong order.
But makes sense.
Yeah. So people coming from all around, that notion was already in place in 1886. So, fast forward, 1937. Other groups who have traveled to the cave have all reported strange noises. So, this Epworth League, which I think is some sort of like Christian youth group or something. Okay. Just because there was a minister mentioned.
Oh. Look at you putting two and two together.
Right. They had a weenie roast. Oh, that's what it said in there. They had a weenie roast near the cave. And while they were poking fun at the legend, they saw a figure of a woman at the top of this cliff. One of the ministers for the group went back the next day to try to investigate, and he did find some sort of shiny moonlit rock. But when they looked at the weather report for that day, or the night that it happened, it was cloudy. There was not a lot of moon visible.
Interesting.
And one person said that their grandmother, I think, was part of this little Weenie Hut Junior roast. And I guess the minister had said to her that he couldn't come up with an explanation for it. So, 1965. A rocking chair that had once been owned by a Bell descendant was sold to an antique store off of US 41. A customer had sat in the chair and asked the store owner if they had believed in the supernatural. A couple weeks later, the daughter of the customer visited the home owner of the antique shop. Sorry, I was trying to find a good way to make that sentence smooth, and it was not going to happen. And she said that her mother had gone to the Bell Cemetery to visit. And when she heard the voice, and then she heard a voice that said, "Stand up, look around, you will find something of much value." Apparently the woman had some car troubles, for whatever reason, decided to go for a walk on a field.
Casual, yes.
Yeah. My first decision too. But
Right.
anyway, she found an old iron kettle, and when she turned it over, she found a pearl buckle, and the pearl buckle was estimated to be around 160 to 200 years old.
Wow.
Didn't say how much it was worth, though.
Yeah, I would want to know.
That's what I'm saying.
Antiques Roadshow.
Exactly. 1977. Bonnie Hainline was playing hooky from school and decided to go visit the Bell.
Naughty.
Yes, and technically this happened in 1944, but her account was recorded in 1977.
Oh, okay.
So she was like telling what she did when she was
Oh,
a kid.
yeah. Okay.
I just didn't feel like typing that all out.
I feel like that too. I'm like, hopefully I'll remember what this was because I don't want to type it.
Well, I just did this today, so that's why
Ah, yes.
She had been there before with some friends, and she borrowed a lantern from the owner of the cave at the time, which I thought was funny because if you're playing hooky, why would you tell an adult? Like, okay. Anyway,
Unless the adult doesn't care.
clearly, because she was given the lantern.
Right.
So she goes walking into the cave, and the light in the lantern blows out.
Naturally, yes.
Tries to relight it again. It obviously goes out.
Obviously, yes.
So she retreats back to the entrance of the cave where she finds a can of beans and some marshmallows. Random, right?
Yeah.
She later discovered that police had found 2 escaped convicts hiding out deeper into the cave.
Ooh.
So did the Bell Witch save her life?
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Right. 1986. A reporter and a photographer went to spend the night in the Bell Witch cave. They were staying in the first cave room when they heard a noise from about 30 yards deeper into the cave.
I would never want to be in a cave. Well, first off, I don't want to be in a cave.
You don't need to.
Second off, I would never want to hear a noise deeper in the cave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So soon after, this noise obviously got louder and began to sound like a moan, groan kind of thing. They went back towards the entrance of the cave and were no longer able to hear the noise. So they tried to explore around, see what it might be, see if it was something that was already in there. Couldn't find it. Go back to where they were, heard this really loud rumble, but that just turned out to be a jet flying overhead. As they were making their way back down to the gated entrance, they could hear a high-pitched scream coming from the cave. So they decided not to stay the night after all.
Good decision on their part, I would say.
That's what I'm saying. So some of these are kind of funny. So I'm watching this documentary, right? And there was a Bo Adams and a Ruth Adams.
Okay.
I'm assuming they're related somehow.
I would assume, yes.
What was interesting is that Ruth Adams ended up telling the story of Bo Adams and what happened to him. Now, I giggled because I can't remember if it was something I read or if it was something someone else in the documentary had said, but they were talking about someone had gone to the cave and have taken a picture and there was something in it. So, Bo Adams went to the cave sometimes because it's open to the public or sometimes it's closed. And usually around Halloween, they have it open. Bo is friends with the owner, so he went to the cave, and there was a lady who was going to perform a seance, and she had photographers with her. So seeing Bo in the background, she thought it was the ghost. But it's just Bo.
Yeah.
And she even says, like, in the doc, she's like, yeah, he just didn't have the heart to tell her that it was him.
Oh,
that's so funny. So I wanted to include that story because it's sweet.
That is sweet.
There is a Bell Witch cafeteria and tea room, and one of the waitresses there has said that like a ticket puncher has been flown across the room.
Would that be a tea room you would go to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not at night.
Oh, no. God,
Yeah.
no.
No, I would do that.
Okay.
Could do daytime stuff.
Did you hear the noise up there?
Heard a creak.
Yes, and that's where the scary crawl space is.
Well, but I feel like buildings creak.
I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, yeah. It's worse when I'm at my place and I hear what to me sounds like a dog walking. And I'm like, well, I don't have a dog, so.
Well, do you think it's Jimmy coming to say hi?
I hope so.
This one podcast I listened to, her dog passed away too, and she was like super close to him. And she says that like after he passed away, they would hear his like click clack on the floors.
Yeah.
Aw.
It's
probably Jimmy.
I heard, it might not have been click clack. It might have been just what kind of sounds like his breathing. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And At first, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And I was like, wait a minute.
Right. That should not be a sound I hear.
I should not hear any sound. Any user. So, since the official visit, many have had experiences with the Bell Witch. However, descendants of the Bell family have chimed in with their experiences.
Ooh, generational hauntings.
Technically, she didn't come back after 107 years, but she might not have left. So, Bob. I don't remember Bob's last name.
Okay.
I just have Bob's story. But I know he's a descendant. Pretty sure it's Bob Bell.
That would make a lot of sense.
So, he said that one night he was getting into bed and the double doors of his bedroom had slammed closed and he heard footsteps on the other side of it walking towards the hallway.
Ew.
Thought someone was in his house.
As one would, yeah.
Right. So he went to go get a gun and then walked through the whole house. Again, couldn't be me. Apparently they got like 2 staircases because when he said that the door was closed, I was like, well, when you opened the door, wouldn't you have just seen... I was confused as to how he got these things, but then he said he had 2 staircases, so I assumed that that's how he acquired some of these materials.
Okay.
Could not find anybody in the house. No one was there.
See, my thought with that, too, was always like, what if they're just good at hiding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, think about it. If you're hiding and someone's looking for you or trying to call out for you,
right.
you're not going to say, here I am.
Yeah, hello. And yeah, if you have a big enough house, they go into the kitchen, you go into the dining room. They go into the dining room, you go back into the kitchen.
Yeah.
You know?
Hide and seek 101.
Right. Like whenever there's like a scary movie and they're searching the house, I'm like, you didn't look under the beds. You didn't look in the closet. You didn't look behind this. You did a horrible job.
So he also tells a story of a time that his grandma had called their house and she was very distraught. She'd been taking a nap and she heard this loud crash coming from downstairs, walked into the kitchen and her china was all over the floor. He was trying to explain how the doors were to this china cabinet that I couldn't really quite understand. But the point is that the china that was all over the floor was not broken.
Oh.
Right?
Interesting.
So I thought that was wild.
Yeah.
Not a single broken piece.
Because you would think big crash,
Mhm.
broken pieces of china.
So this other guy, he's not a Bell descendant, but he like moved to the area. He was teaching a history class at the local community college. And there was a guy in the class who had asked if he had ever been there, said no. So knew the owner and was like, hey, let's go. Cool, let's do it.
Soup's cash.
Mm-hmm. They supposedly went about 250 feet into the cave. And they were looking at some Native American drawings, and all of a sudden the lights go out. So the lights go out. They all walk back towards the entrance of the cave. Lights come back on. He said that his son was about 6 or 7, but he wouldn't let him go into the cave. He had stayed in the house that's on the property with the woman who lives there. And he thought, well, it's got to be the lady flickering the lights. Son said she didn't move at all when she was there. And,
Yeah.
then he said, I've never been back. I have no desire to go. Said, my man.
Yup.
So Lucy Bell Butler, who is, again, a descendant, believes that the Bell Witch is not just tied to the farm, but anywhere the family goes. Lucy and her daughter, Jennifer, have seen the black dog creature from the original legend. They regularly saw this girl giggling and running throughout the house. One of the stories from the cave was that when the Bell children were exploring there, Betsy had seen a girl like swinging on a tree, and that girl had told her not to marry that guy or something like that. So spooky things happen to the Bell children at the cave too. So
Yeah.
I think that's where,
Okay.
But yeah, so apparently this girl was running around the house giggling. So Lucy said it would play with her daughter, watch over her. So the theory for the witch being so nice to this family is because the connection to Lucy, as in Lucy, the wife. And that was the only family member that the witch was nice to. And my thinking was, if there really is that genealogy connection, and if Kate Batts was really the witch, and she's family, it's like her aunt technically.
Right.
Maybe that's why. Like, I felt like it made sense in that context.
No, that does make sense.
Of like, that could make sense why she was the only one she didn't torment.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But Lucy also said, or I'm going to say Butler because it's going to get confusing. Butler said that the witch did not like her father. He was some actor from Memphis and maybe had ties with the mafia in Florida.
Oh.
least I didn't say supposedly. Said maybe.
Maybe.
Her father had bought some sort of luxury stereo, back in the 60s. And she said one day that she had come downstairs and the living room was covered in crickets.
Ew.
They had climbed into the stereo and broke it.
Ew.
Yeah. Her husband, Larry, was, of course, skeptical at first. But then after staying with her in her apartment, he saw jewelry move around. There was a thing on a lamp that was flying, and he checked to make sure there was no cross breeze.
Yeah.
Nothing. So, now, an important note. Because we can technically debunk the fact that Ingram made this all up.
Okay.
He didn't.
Okay.
So, the only for sure undeniable truth to this story is that the Bell family existed.
Yes.
They are real people.
Good.
However, everything else is all secondhand.
Of course, as it is.
So, however, there is at least some proof that Martin Ingram did not make up this legend.
Okay.
So I am not saying it is for sure true. I am saying that he didn't make it up.
Okay.
Somebody else might have.
Yeah.
But not him.
Okay.
So, like I said, the Ingram fabrication theory.
Mm-hmm.
He made the whole thing up because it didn't exist prior.
Yep.
Until now. So, there are 2 artifacts that can prove that Ingram himself did not make up the legend. These artifacts, like I said, don't prove that the Bell Witch existed, just that the legend has always been there.
Okay.
So the first comes from a newspaper article that was printed by the Green Mountain Freeman, which is in Vermont, on February 7th, 1856. Remember, book, 1896.
Yes.
Okay. It was posted in the variety section of the newspaper. I didn't get into this part of the theory because I wanted to wait until now, but there is a theory that Betsy had ventriloquist abilities. And she didn't want to marry the Joshua guy, or she did. And so she was throwing her voice to be the witch to get her dad to let her do it.
Interesting.
That comes from this paper. So the point being is that most legends say that she wanted to end the engagement.
Yeah.
Like the witch didn't want her to get married. But this one is saying Betsy wanted to get married to him, so she created this ghost. However, because this was posted in 1856, which is about 42 years before the book was published, this discovery was noted by that Pat guy on his website as proof that the story of the Bell Witch was known prior to the publishing of Ingram's book, and therefore was proof that he could not have made up the whole legend himself. A more recent discovery was made that Fitzhugh, Pat, shared in December of 2020.
Oh.
So a journal entry by Army Captain John R. Bell, no relation, who was passing through the area in the fall of 1820.
Oh.
John Bell died in December.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what it says. Rather, a single circumstance was here related to me of a young girl about 15 years of age residing but 3 miles from Murphy. A voice accompanies her, which says she should marry a man, a neighbor. Thousands of persons have visited her to hear this voice. In many instances, it will reply to questions put to it. The visitors have left as little satisfied in their curiosity as before they heard it. Many are under the impression that it is ventriloquism imposed upon the hearers either by the girl or her brother, who it seems is generally in her company. Her family is respectable. That was it. Very similar to the story written in that newspaper 35 years later. And this entry was 12 years before Ingram was even born.
Oh.
So, and there's there's a journal.
Yeah.
So while it does not directly mention the Bell family versus the other article from the 50s it does say that this is what the Bell girl did. It's very strongly implied, taken with the fact that where he was at the time and what was going on.
Yeah.
And one of the big things being that people came from all around to see this witch.
Yep. So it fits.
It fits. So while many admit that this story has been obviously passed around so much that various versions are shared among the many, in the town of Adam, Tennessee, during October, the community puts on a play called Spirit, and each night it acts out a different version of the legend.
Oh, how cool.
Which I thought was cute. And this is the county's largest revenue for tourism.
Very cool.
So could this have been a monetary expedition set out by a skillful storyteller? Maybe. Actually, I said perhaps. It could also be the true story of an evil witch tormenting a local family for years. Maybe one day the truth of the legend will be revealed, but until then, you can decide for yourself if you would like to believe in the Bell Witch.
Very cool.
Yes.
When we went to Tennessee, I wanted to go to the Bell Witch Cave.
Mm.
I was with mom and dad, and I was like, we could hit it on the way back. Like, we were seeing the signs for it. But I'd listened to a podcast called Two Girls, One Ghost, and they had covered it. And they were talking about how there's like another legend of the cave where you can't take anything from it or you'll be cursed. So even if like a rock gets stuck in your shoe and you leave with that rock in your shoe, you took something from the cave so you could be cursed. So I told mom that, and she goes, maybe we don't go. And I said, yeah, let's not go. We're really good at convincing each other not to go to creepy things.
That's okay.
Yeah. So we ended up not going. But ever since I heard that little thing about not taking anything from the cave, I was like, ooh, too spooky.
Mm-hmm.
I will not be going there.
Well, and what was interesting is that the Bell Witch is not necessarily just in Tennessee. Apparently, there's variations of it in North Carolina and all that.
Oh, how cool.
There is supposedly something about John Bell, the reason he left North Carolina in the first place was kind of some sketchy stuff.
Okay.
Not like when I was reading what it was, I thought it was going to be like adultery or murder, and it was like something with something with property.
Oh.
So, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's
Not as, like, exciting.
right. So, it depends on where you read. There are various versions.
Mm-hmm.
One of the places I read said that the Bell Witch was a Native American spirit who was haunting because they were on a burial site or something like that.
As it always
One
is.
said that the reason why it, was called Kate Bates was because Kate Bates's grandson was actually the one who was mad at John Bell. So, like I said, you really could choose your own adventure. And I was trying to get, once I realized how many different ways that this story could be spun, I was like, let me just get the gist.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to get the main story down first.
Yeah. And what was cool, though, is that there was a lot of, even Wikipedia had all these accounts of newspaper articles from other places that were alluding to this witch.
Yeah.
And experiences that people have had. There was one where this guy had said that he was being, chased by a rabbit. Eventually he ran
With
out
a dog body.
No, just rabbit.
Yeah.
Apparently he ran out of breath and went to go sit down, and I have to read you what he said this rabbit said because I was going to include it, and
Oh,
I
it
was
was a
like,
talking rabbit.
yeah. After a mile, Sanders sat down on a log to catch his breath. The rabbit hopped up on the other side of the log, looked at him, and said, "Hell of a race we had there, wasn't it?" And I was like, if I'm trying to make a case for this being believable,
I cannot include
that's
the talking
not
rabbit.
it. But I did like what this one lady said. She's a researcher from Mississippi. And it says, a researcher of the Mississippi version of the legend.
Oh.
So I think it's like a big Southern thing.
Yeah.
She has expressed the Bell Witch legend has other value. Quote, as a historian of collective memory, it matters very little to my research if hauntings are real or not. It does matter that people believe they are. As a result, they can help us understand the perspectives, in this case, of 19th and 20th century Americans.
Cool.
So, that is the Bell Witch.
Very cool.
Yes.
So you would go to like the tea house and the restaurant thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not going to go to the cave.
No,
I don't fuck with caves.
I don't either.
Had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Someone fell on my face.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't be
I
spelunking.
had my bell rung.
This one guy I listened to on YouTube, Mr. Ballin, he's really cool. He always talks about creepy caves and people who got stuck in caves. I'm like, no.
I didn't get stuck.
No, I know. But
I was
that's why I don't like caves.
Afraid.
I don't like not being able to get out of things. And if
Yeah.
something bad happens, you can't get out immediately.
There's a thing called the pancake room, and you had to lay flat. You couldn't, you
No.
had to lay on your stomach.
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't go in that one either.
No.
Only good thing, there was 3 things that came out of that trip. Number 1, learned how to play the game Mafia.
Oh, that's such a fun game.
Great game. Number 2, learned of the song American Pie.
Oh, great song.
And Old Time Rock and Roll.
Okay.
So,
Good.
those were the 2 good experiences.
Okay.
Other than that, oh, and I did see the Milky Way. That was cool.
Oh, pretty.
That was really
Yeah.
cool. That was the first time I'd ever seen it. So
Yeah.
that was awesome.
That is cool.
But that was it.
That was it. Well, this was a good one.
This was a good one.
Another long one.
I felt like the way I told this story is very much a representation of my mind.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, I followed it.
I know. Like, I'm like telling it and you're like nodding along and I'm like, well, she's getting it, but I have no idea.
I think we've just been friends for so long that I know how your brain works. So when you tell me a story, you've been telling me stories this way for 18 years.
Yeah.
I understand how they work. I followed along perfectly.
I like try to remember that I'm not just talking to you.
Right?
Like even when you're telling your stories and my mouth is open, I'm like, you have to say something. They cannot see you.
One day, hopefully, we have cameras. And then all of the having to be like,
I can be as silent as I want.
Right. Everyone will see everything perfectly on your face.
Yes. So yeah, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, thanks for listening.
Again.
And every time you listen, thank you. Yeah. Follow us on all the things. Rate us good reviews on all the things.
Rate us, love us. You know, say hi.
Yeah, say hi. We love it.
We love it.
All right, well, that's all we have, so stay scary.
Stay safe.